Okay, welcome back to our part 5 video on quadratic expressions. Now, we said in one of our classes that the general expression for a quadratic, or the general term, or the general expression for a quadratic is given as ax squared plus bx plus c. We added that at grade 9, we assume A at grade 9, that's Js3. We assume A to be equal to 1. So if we assume A to be equal to 1, it's done deliberately so that we have you understand the concept better. It means that what we are dealing with at your level will be what? X squared plus bx plus c. This is what we have. Now, let's mirror this. Let's call back something we did earlier. Remember we said a plus 2 into a plus 1, a plus 2 into a plus 1, and by way of direct product method, we're going to expand this. Okay, we'll do our expansion. I'm going to have a squared plus a plus 2a plus 2. Now, what was going to happen here? We will add these two together. We're going to have a squared plus 3a plus 2. And this will be our final answer. A squared plus 3a plus 2. Okay, so from this, we have that a squared plus 3a plus 2, a squared plus 3a plus 2 is our result. So let's take it here and analyze our result. A squared plus 3a plus 2. Now, look at what I had here. I'm going to have a squared plus 2a, or I can say a plus 2a plus 2. Look at that. And then I'm going to have a into a plus 1. So look at this. I separate them at this point. So I'm going to have a into a plus 2, a plus 1. Then what is common here? I have plus 2 into what? A plus 1. And finally, let's put an equal sign. I'm going to have that a plus 1 is common. And finally, I'm going to have what? A plus 2. Let's work it. You know what we've been doing in terms of binomials to quadratic is that we multiply to get this one. Now, let's try to factor out to get the binomial. So, here, what we try to do, we move from binomial to quadratic. We are moving from binomial to what? Quadratic. But over here, we are moving from quadratic to what? Binomial. We're moving from quadratic to what? Binomial. So let's take this expression once again. Look at a squared plus 3a plus 2. This term you are seeing at the middle is what we call the sum of factors. So SF will mean sum of factors. What are the factors? As I'm doing this, I want you to be making a call back to this. The factors that gave us 3a were a and what? 2a. Now, when I multiply this term with this term, the first and the last, because remember that when we solve, we multiply to get this position. We multiply to get this position. Now, when we multiply both of them, what we are going to obtain is what is called the PF, which is called the product of what? Factors. So PF becomes the product of factors. Now, we know what the sum of factors are. We know what the product of factors are. Now, or is rather. Now, what do we Now know the factors to be. We have talked about the sum of the factors. We have talked about the product of the factors. Now, how do we now get the factors themselves? Now, if you look at this carefully, the sum of factors in this case is what? 3a. The product of factors in this case is what? 2a squared. Because how did I get that? I multiplied the first and the last term together. How did I get this one? By adding the terms. We saw that from moving from binomial to quadratic. That's a callback. Now, how do we get these factors? Look at this carefully, because this is where the knowledge of everything we did in the last video comes to play. What number is this? Is 3 even or odd? Odd. Beautiful. Odd. So let's focus on the number and imagine you are not seeing this. Focus on the number and imagine you are not seeing a or a squared. Focus on the number. Now, what type of number is it? Is this even or odd? Even. Even. Now, what are the conditions to get odd number when you add up? Go back to your book and check. What are the conditions for us to get odd? What two numbers will I need to work with in addition to get odd? Odd plus even. So which means that to get odd, I need to have odd and even. I see that I need to get what? Odd and even. Add odd to even. Now, what conditions will give me even? What conditions will give me even? Check. Odd and even, or what? Even and even. That's the condition that will give me product. Look at product or factor. Product is that I'm multiplying two numbers. Is that not? If I multiply an even with an odd, we said that the only way you can get even is when you multiply two evens, or you multiply what? One even and one odd. Now look at this you have on the board. You discover that under this condition you have odd and even. Is that not? Here you have odd and even. Here you have odd and even and even. We can't use this. Because the condition for this must be the condition for this. Odd and even, odd and even. So let's look at 2. What two numbers will I multiply to get 2? One odd, one even. 2 and 1. Very good. So the factors I'm looking for will be what? 1 and 2. So where I have 1 and 2, I'm going to replace this 1 and 2 with what? I'm going to replace 3a with what? 1 and 2. So let's see that. What's happening? I have a squared plus 3a plus 2. Now, the factors are selected are what? 1 and 2. Remember I said imagine you're not seeing a and a squared. So, because the factors are defined in terms of a, I will now put 1 times a is what? A. 2 times a is what? 2a. So it's called that where I have 3a now, I will now put what? A and what? 2a plus 2. Why am I doing this? Do you know that it is easier to share 4 things amongst 2 persons than to share 3 things amongst 2 persons? Why? If you have 3 things shared among 2 persons, they will fight, they will quarrel, they will keep malice, everything. But if I have 4 things to be shared amongst 2 persons, the quarrel will be reduced. So what do I do now? I will then, in my mind, what I teach students, please let's watch. I tell students, now in your mind, use your pencil, cut it at this point. And then I look at these 2. What is common to these 2? A is common. If I divide a squared by a, I'm going to be left with what? A plus 1. I look at these 2. It is plus, this is plus. So I bring out what? Plus what? 2. 2a divided by 2 is what? A. 2 divided by 2 is what? 1. I look at these 2. What is common? I'm seeing a plus 1. I'm seeing a plus 1. I take out a plus 1 from here. I'm left with what? A. I take out a plus 1 from here. I'm left with what? 2. So you discover that when you multiply this by this, you must get this. So what we have done is that we have tried to move from Z to A. All the while we have been doing A to Z. Now we are moved from what? Z to A. Alright, so that's that for that, and then we'll continue. Text for this course, it's the New General Mathematics for Js3 or grade 9, and we'll be looking at page 91, exercise 9D. So let's look at question 1. Let's look at question 1. Okay, now the first thing you need to do in handling this is you need to look at what we call your sum of factors. Sum of what? Factors. Now, we've told you that the sum of factors we can get from this position. Is that not? So that will be what? 6. Forget about the x. Doesn't really matter. Leave the x first. Leave the unknown. Now, we look at what is called the product of factors. Now, because at your level, we are assuming the coefficient of x squared to be 1. We can just say that the sum of factors will simply be what? I mean, the product of factors will be what? 5. So you put 5 there. The next thing you try to do is, what are the factors? So we look at this. What two numbers will I add to get even? Rather, what two numbers will I add to get, or two factors will I add to get an even number? I can add 2 even, is that not? Yes. Or what? 2 odd, is that not? Good. Now, what two numbers will I multiply to get odd? What two numbers will I multiply to get odd? What's the condition for me to get an odd answer? Odd and odd, both must be odd. Please, let's remember this. Please check your schedule again. We said that the only condition for us to get an odd when you're multiplying is that both numbers must be odd. If you multiply even with even, you get even. If you multiply even with odd, you get what? Even. Go back and study that sketch very well. Study it very well. So, if you look at these two now, what is common? This idea is common to this idea, so I don't need this. So the two numbers I'm looking for must both be odd. Is that not? So I look at, once I've completed that, I come to 5. What two numbers will I multiply to get 5? 1 and 5. So that will be what? 1, 5. Which I can now write as what? X and 5x. Once you've done this, you can now put this here. So I will have x squared plus, where I have 6x now, now replace it with what? X and what? 5x. So x plus 5x plus what? 5. I say that the idea to get this one is to replace this one. The idea behind getting this one is that we want to replace this one. And why are we replacing this one? Because we know that to share 4 things among 2 persons is better than sharing 3 things amongst 2 persons. So this will now give us what? I told us that you use your pencil. Please, when you're handling this topic now, get your pencil. It may not be necessary for some of us, but for me, I will use a pencil to cut at this point, so I don't forget. So now I will pick out x. X is common to these two, and I'll be left with what? X plus 1. Now let me break this a little, because some of us still find it difficult to. If I have x squared and x, I divide this part with x, I'll get x. I divide this with x, I'll get what? Plus 1. What did I use to divide? X. What I used to divide, I put it outside, times what is remaining after the division. Plus, if I look at 5, beautiful. So I'll come here again. I divide here with 5, I divide here with 5. I will have 5 dividing both, and I'll be left with what? X plus 1. Is that clear? So this will now be x plus 1. Now look at this. What is common to this? I have x plus 1. That is what? Common. So I'll put x plus 1 here. And then I'm left with what? X here plus 5. And this is what the final answer will be. When they say factorize this expression, this is what you are going to get. And that's the final answer. Okay, now we look at what is called case digest for quadratic factorization, or what you may call quadratic expression factorization. There are 4 possibilities you can have when it comes to factorizing quadratic expressions. The first one is a scenario where the middle term and all the terms are positive. Please let's watch carefully. All the terms are positive. The second scenario is where the middle term is what? Negative. Only the middle term is negative. The third scenario is where the last term is negative. And finally, we have a scenario where the middle and the last term are both negative. Notice that in all the scenarios we have treated, we have assumed, or we work with the assumption that the first term, they are always what? Positive. It's done deliberately because of your level. Because of your level. As you progress higher in this course, we will do a little tweaking to it. But for now, the 4-case scenario we will treat assumes that all the first terms are positive. So what we're essentially doing is to play with this one. So if you watch the permutation very well, what you'll be seeing will be something like this. Plus, 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 minus, plus, 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 minus, and plus, minus, minus. So isolate it and look at this one. This is what we'll be considering. It looks funny, but this position is what we call sum of factors, and this position is what we call product of factors. So sum of factors and product of factors, with the first term all being what? Positive. Okay, this is where we're going to draw the curtain for today. In our next class, we will try to go in depth into these 4 scenarios and then take more scenarios that you can see. It's been a pleasure having you in today's class. Mamu Jarvis will surely return in quadratic expressions in the matter of factorization. See you next time.